Hi everyone, Deep in the Breath, Tano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of the new Tomb Mold album, Planetary Clairvoyance, the newest and third full-length album from this Toronto-based metal four-piece, Tomb Mold. It's here. They've been making waves in the underground metal scene since the release of their debut in 2017. Interest in the band reached a fever pitch with the release of their sophomore record, Manner of Infinite Forms, a record that didn't really resonate with me as much as I would have wanted it to. Now, granted, Tomb Mold's music sits on the filthier, heavier, more gruesome side of the death metal genre, with the Autopsies and Cannibal Corpses of the world maybe pushing it a little further in that direction. They're not trying to be too melodic, they're not trying to be too technical, they're not trying to fuse the genre with anything else gimmicky or weird or just outside of the usual death metal purview. It's good if all you're looking for is a band that is carrying the torch for a classic strain of extreme metal. It's not so good if you're looking for something new, refreshing, cutting edge, or even all that distinct. So I do admit that Manner's complete lack of novelty did cause me to tune it out a little bit, even if I can't acknowledge that the band does what they do incredibly well. The performances are tight, the production is heavy, there seems to be a lot of attention to detail in terms of recapturing this sound. So I saw the band put out another record, it was getting even more praise, and I figured I had to sit down and figure out if this was finally going to click with me. But no, this album still very much came off to me as a basic but still incredibly hideous and nasty death metal experience. I do appreciate the band attempting to vary their sound up a little bit though, like with the ominous intro and acoustic guitar break and harmonized guitar solos toward the end of Beg for Life, or the pummeling drums and zany guitar harmonies on Accelerative Phenomena. Tomb Mold also manages to work in this 3-minute, somewhat glitchy, drony, ambient interlude that's a tad bit eerie. I guess it might be a tone setter for the next track, but it comes at a weird point in the track list. Still, it's an unexpected detour for the band. There's also the incredibly slow and sinister and melodic finish of the closing track, Heat Death, that I thought was one of the most powerful moments on the record too. So all of this variety across the track list shows the band is definitely paying more attention to the flow of this album, its progression on the whole. Still though, I would argue that the production on the group's last record was actually better than what is being presented here. The sound on Manner generally in comparison with Planetary is a lot heavier, a lot wider, more presence, feels like a more enveloping sound. By comparison, this new record over here is a lot noisier, a lot more chaotic. It just doesn't have as much punch as its predecessor, even if it is a bit harsher. Because there are some passages on this album where it is super satisfying with how the vocals in a very ugly way just swallow up a majority of the mix. But still, the trade-off with that is there is a lot of sonic and compositional detail that is lost and buried in the drums, in the guitars. Still, despite this, the band manages to drop quite a few highlights on this thing. The track Beg for Life I mentioned earlier moves through multiple interesting phases. There are riffs on this thing that are tension building. There are riffs on this thing that are incredibly chunky and heavy, riffs that are very groovy. And everything gets dramatic around that acoustic breakdown I mentioned earlier. If I had to guess the goal of the title track on this thing, it would be that it is attempting to just sound as relentless as possible, with the drums hitting a nice speedy click on a kick drum snare pattern. The equally fast riffs have a disgusting guitar tone on them. There's also a pretty neat transition into a new riff toward the end of the track that has a thrashy quality to it, but it is crushingly heavy. There are elements of Infinite Resurrection that feel as heavy, feel as brutal and punishing, but it's like the full brunt of the band's sound and their performances are held back by the recording, which makes the entire record feel very one-dimensional, feel very collapsed. This thing is a beast, it's an animal, but it's chained down. It's not able to just like get out there and rip out your throat. It can't reach you. Past this point, I think the last true stunner on this album is the closing cut, Heat Death. I do like the dreary atmosphere presented in the final moments of that song. Yeah, I guess I feel like I'm in the midst of a weird trade-off between this record and the band's last one. I mean, while I do enjoy the compositional versatility the group is starting to incorporate on this new record, their last album did feel heavier. If only that clarity and monstrous presence could have carried over onto this new record that has more interesting compositional detours. Maybe the next Tomb Mold record will click with me a bit more. This one was not bad though. I think it's a decent record. I think it's likable. I think there are a lot of people out there who will enjoy this a lot more than me, especially if you're a death metal purist. I am feeling personally a decent 2 strong 6 on this one. Transition, have you given this album a listen? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? You're the best, you're the best. What should I review next? Hit the like if you like. Please subscribe and please don't cry. Hit the bell as well. Over here next to my head is a video that you can check out. Hit that up or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, Tomb Mold, forever.